Good evening, friends. We begin reading from Job tonight. We did an introduction a couple of days ago, but now it's actually time to read. Let's start as we always do by taking a look at the big picture here. Job's a fairly lengthy book, 42 chapters. The opening two chapters stand on their own as a prologue and introduction. The final chapter stands on its own as an epilogue. Most of this book is in the second section, Job and the friends, and then God's response. Interesting thing, keep in mind here. This is a very old book. Folks who like to try to put a timeline together for the writing of scripture or when events happened will say this is one of the earliest scriptural moments, maybe the earliest written scripture. It doesn't happen among the Israelites. Job is a faithful man of God, but not Jewish. From the land of Uz, a land far away from Israel. Very interesting to contemplate. Very interesting to ponder. How did this get into Hebrew scriptures? Very interesting. I don't have the answers to that. It's just an interesting thing to contemplate. So chapters 1 and 2, the prologue. All of this begins with two heavenly encounters and some messiness that comes around out of those divine heavenly being encounters. Moments that rightly challenge us. How do we view God? How do we view God's power and God's authority and God's very being? I'll say more about that as we read. But for now, let's jump in and read. Pull up our windows here, pull up the timer. We'll read for 8 minutes as we always do. And the left-hand column is the text of Job as found in the complete Jewish Bible, Jewish Bible. And the text in the right-hand column is from a Christian Bible, specifically the New Revised Standard Version updated edition. I may reference that from time to time, primarily to bring Jewish biblical language into Christian biblical language, because there's always some distinct wording in Jewish biblical language that is a little foreign to our Christian ears. Like, for example, right off the top here, Yov. That's Job. Yov. In Jewish biblical language, the name of Job. Yov. Good evening, Don and Linda. Chapter 1. There was a man in the land of Uz, or just Uz, as we refer to it, whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 pairs of oxen, and 500 female donkeys, as well as a great number of servants, so that he was the wealthiest man in the East. His sons used to go and hold feasts in one another's houses in turn, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. And when the feast days had run their course, Job would. Oh, focused him. We're reading from the left. My eyes just flashed over. Okay, let's start that again. Verse 4. It was the custom of his sons to give banquets, each on his set day, in his own house. And they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. After a cycle of banquets, Yov would send for them to come and be consecrated. Then he would get up early in the morning and offer burnt offerings for each of them, because Yov said, "My sons might have sinned and blasphemed God in their thoughts." This is what Yov did every time. That sets the stage for the first heavenly beings encounter. It happened one day that the sons of God came to serve Adonai, and among them came the adversary, the one known as the accuser, the actual name, Satana, Hasatana, actually. Adonai asked the adversary, "Where are you coming from?" The adversary answered Adonai, "From roaming through the earth, wandering here and there." Adonai asked the adversary, "Did you notice my servant Job? That there's no one like him on earth? A blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil?" The adversary answered Adonai, "Is it for nothing that Job fears God? You've put a protective hedge around him, his house, and everything he has. You've prospered his work, and his livestock are spread out all over the land. But if you reach out your hand and touch whatever he has, without doubt, he'll curse you to your face." Adonai said to the adversary, "Here, everything he has is in your hands, except that you are not to lay a finger on his person." Then the adversary went out from the presence of Adonai. I'm going to pause there for just a moment. Remember, I said at the very beginning of this chapter and the next one challenge our views of God, God's authority, God's power. God is all powerful. That's what we believe, that's what we teach. And it works until all of a sudden bad things happen to good people, and the righteous suffer. And then it becomes very easy to do, as is often done, in much of Christianity to say, the devil made me do it, to blame the adversary, the accuser, the enemy, to do anything to remove responsibility from us and also to distance these things from God. And I get why we do that, but it sets up something that's heresy. We do not live in a dualistic creation where the adversary and God are on equal playing fields. The adversary cannot do anything without God allowing it. Job's story reminds us of that. Right here, we are reminded of that. The adversary can't do anything without God's permission. And yes, of course, that's right. Until all of a sudden we hear a story of suffering like Job's, and then it's like, well, what do we do with this? Let's keep reading. One day, when Job's sons and daughters were eating and drinking in their oldest brother's house, a messenger came to him and said, the oxen were plowing with the donkeys grazing near them when a raiding party from Shiva, the Sabians, came and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword too, and I'm the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another one came and said, fire from God fell from the sky and burned up the sheep and the servants. It completely destroyed them, and I'm the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another one came and said, the Kasdim, the Chaldeans, three bands of them fell on the camels and carried them off. They put the servants to the sword too, and I'm the only one who escaped to tell you. Well, he was still speaking. Another one came and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, when suddenly a strong wind blew in from over the desert. It struck the four corners of the house, so that it fell on the young people. They are dead, and I'm the only one who escaped to tell you. Yov got up, tore his coat, shaved his head, fell down on the ground, and worshipped. He said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return there. Adonai gave, Adonai took. Blessed be the name of Adonai. In all this, Yov neither committed a sin nor put blame on God. Remember, by the way, Adonai is the general referring to God without using the sacred name of God. That is considered by our Jewish friends so sacred as to only be spoken by God. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2, there's another not divine. There's another heavenly being's encounter with the divine, with God, like the first. And the second one is just going to reinforce all the more God's authority is superior. And nothing happens without God allowing it. Chapter 2. . 2 . 2 . 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. Another day came when the sons of God came to serve Adonai, and among them came the adversary to serve Adonai. Adonai asked the adversary, "Where are you coming from?" The adversary answered Adonai, "From roaming through the earth, wandering here and there." Adonai asked the adversary, "Did you notice my servant Job? That there's no one like him on earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil, and that he still holds on to his integrity, even though you provoked me against him to destroy him for no reason?" The adversary answered Adonai, "Skin for skin. A person will give up everything he has to save his life. But if you reach out your hand and touch his flesh and bone without doubt, he'll curse you to your face." Adonai said to the adversary, "Here, he is in your hands, except that you are to spare his life." Then the adversary went out from the presence of Adonai and struck Job down with horrible infected sores from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. He took a piece of a broken pot to scratch himself and sat down in the pile of ashes. His wife asked him, "Why do you still hold on to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he answered her, "You're talking like a low-class woman." Ooh, that's rather not subtle, is it? Are we to receive the good at God's hands, but reject the bad? In all this, Job did not say one sinful word. Now, when Job's three friends heard of all the calamities that had overwhelmed him, they all came. Each came from his own home. Eliphaz from Teman, Bildad from Shuah, the Shuhite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Sophar from Naamah, the Naamathite. They had agreed to meet together in order to come and offer him sympathy and comfort. When they saw him from a distance, they couldn't even recognize him. They wept aloud, tore their coats, and threw dust over their heads toward heaven. Then they sat down with him on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights. No one spoke a word to him because they saw how much he was suffering. That's where we're going to pause, friends. Note, by the way, this is one of those moments where chapter and verse markings don't match between Jewish biblical tradition and Christian biblical tradition. According to chapter and verse in the Christian tradition, we'll start with verse 1 of chapter 3 next time. Note that in Jewish biblical chapters and verses, we're starting with chapter 2, verse 14. Interesting. So the friends are there, and spoiler alert, friends, let me just say this. As we read this section, chapters 3 through 37, Job and the friends, if these are Job's friends, Job doesn't need enemies or critics. Next time that we pick up Job, We'll start with this long section of Job and the friends. Peace be with you, dear friends. Merry Christmas.